Good morning, everybody. My name is Patty Torsney, and I'm the permanent observer for the Interparliamentary Union here at the United Nations. And this is perhaps one of the most exciting weeks here at the UN. And we are very pleased, as we have done many years, to launch with UN Women the map of women in politics that has just been released. Some of the data was released last week in Geneva, but the map itself is being released this morning. So we have two presentations, and then we will turn to all of you for questions. Gabriela.
Thank you very much, Patty. Phumzile, thank you very much for being always so close to the Interparliamentary Union. We're going to present the most important figures and data that we found during the last year and that are represented in this report. First of all, women's representation in political decision-making continues to rise slowly, with slight improvements since 2017. Last year measure was only an increase by 0.1%, and for this last year it goes to 1%. The map shows the proportion of women ministers is at an all-time high at 20.7%. 2.4 percentage points higher compared to 2017. The map follows the publication last week of the IPU's Women in Parliament 2018 analysis, which showed that the global share of women MPs, 24.3%, has increased by nearly 1 point compared with 2017. The analysis shows that countries with well-designed gender quotas elected significantly more women to parliament than those without, respectively 7 points more in single or lower chambers and 17 points more in upper chambers. This year, we saw also the highest ever number of women in parliamentary speakers, increasing by 0.6 percentage points to 19.7%, including women speakers for the first time in Bahrain, the Philippines, and Togo. And women deputy speakers increasing by 1.6 percentage points to 28.2%. However, women's representation in top-level leadership has decreased from 7.2% of elected heads of state to 6.6%, and from 5.7% of heads of government to 5.2%, 10 out of 193. More gender-balanced governments. 9 countries, up from 6 in 2017, have 50% more women in ministerial positions. Spain comes top with 64.7%. Top 10 countries also include 3 Latin American countries, Nicaragua, Colombia, and Costa Rica. Shifts in women-held ministerial portfolios. The types of portfolios held by women ministers are shifting. Women continue to hold portfolios considered soft on social affairs or family, children, or youth. However, the trade industry portfolio is among the top 5 ministries held by women globally for the first time. Strikingly, more women are in charge of portfolios traditionally occupied by men compared to 2017. 30% more women ministers cover defense. 52.9% more women cover finance, and 13.6% more women cover foreign affairs. Regional stories increases in women's ministers. Ethiopia saw the largest increase in women's political representation in the executive, comparatively from 10% women ministers in 2017 to 47.6% in this year. Mexico made the biggest strides in the Americas with the addition of 5 women ministers, increasing the overall share of women ministers by 26.3 percentage points. Among countries in Asia, Pakistan progressed from having no women ministers since 2012 to reaching its highest ever share of women ministers at 12%. In the Middle East and North Africa, Mauritania maintains the largest share of women ministers in the region at 31.8%, with the United Arab Emirates following closely at 29%. If we go to the decreases in women ministers, in Europe, Slovenia dropped the most percentage points since 2017, from 50% to now only 25% women ministers. Lithuania no longer has women in ministerial positions, compared to 2017, when they were 3 out of 14, or 21.4%. In Asia, the share of women ministers in the Philippines decreased by 14.7 points to 10.3%. Japan lost 2 female ministers, leaving 1 woman out of 19 cabinet ministers, or only 5.3%. The number of countries with no women ministers decreased from 13 in 2017 to 11. They are Azerbaijan, Belize, Brunei Darussalam, Iraq, Kiribati, Lithuania, Papua New Guinea, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Saudi Arabia, Thailand, and Vanuatu. The strides made in a number of countries show us that there are ways to achieve progress, in particular when well-designed legal quotas are in place and where there is strong political will to achieve and sustain change. But lifting the barriers to women's participation in political decision-making is also about eliminating discrimination in the law. We know that the barriers are and where they come from. Most countries in the world still discriminate against women in their legislation, which prevents them from fully participating in public life. Also, too often we witness stereotyping of women and acts of sexism, harassment, and violence against women running for elected office, but also against women in office. An IPU study shows that 85% of women MPs have suffered some type of abuse during their terms in office. This can also send one message, that politics is a man's place where women do not belong. The IPU is committed to changing these patterns, improving legal frameworks, building political and changing mindsets everywhere, so that we can finally achieve gender equality in political leadership. These are our data, our findings, but I believe that the most important lesson that we achieved after all these studies is that it's absolutely clear that legal quotas, that affirmative action, when it is well designed, it really changes a reality. And if we are able to make institutional changes, then we are going to have also cultural changes. And that's what we want to make it happen through legislation and, of course, also through budget. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gabriela, for this presentation. And I have to say I'm also very thankful and appreciate the work that IPU does as a significant partner of UN Women. You have heard the numbers. They speak for themselves. We do have snail pace project progress. We are obviously concerned because we were hoping that by this time we have been very far in terms of the progress that we would have made. We have not reached the targets of gender balance that the member states and the leadership had wanted to achieve, and we therefore hope that we can also encourage member states to lead from the front when they see this kind of statistics, because when we provide evidence, we are able to also give them the backing that they need to make the changes. The fact that 75% of legislators are men. Really? That's a lot of men making laws for all of us. The fact that only 9 countries have gender-equal cabinets in a situation where appointing cabinet ministers requires one person at most, with the help of colleagues, party, and so on. But it's one of the low-hanging fruits that we would want to encourage heads of state to address as speedily as possible. We, however, also want to appreciate the fact that women who are in office are also setting new trends, demonstrating that some of the myths that have existed can be broken. The fact that the Prime Minister of New Zealand became the first woman leader to take maternity leave in office and the sky didn't fall. So tick. We also have seen countries that have never had women leading, having women leaders: Romania, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, Ethiopia. This is worth noting, but we need more countries that will fall in that category. We've also seen, for instance, in Tunisia, in Parliament, that the increase of women in Parliament can actually lead and usher gender-sensitive constitution and electoral reforms. That is significant because women were able to use their muscle. So you could show that when you have more women, you can actually facilitate far-reaching changes. We also want to appreciate that in many of the countries where you have women, it has been because there has been special measures. I think what we can now say is that special measures are necessary. We are not likely to see cultural change where there are no special measures. It will take too long. A combination, as Gabriela was saying, of budget and investment in facilitating change and special measures is what is going to give us the big, bold push that we need. Incremental change is just too slow. And because this is an institution that is so important, parliaments are so important in setting the trends and the way society evolves, it is important that we help this institution to perform much stronger and much better and be a leader in bringing about change. We also have seen that countries where more women ministers are in the critical decision making, some of the sensitive and people-oriented changes are most likely to happen, like what we are discussing in this year's CSW. Issues such as infrastructure for the poorest of people, such as sanitation, schools, water. Women are a critical driver of making those changes happen. Ensuring that social protection reaches the poorest of the poor and that women are the ones who actually receive cash transfers are some of the decisions that women are particularly focused on making. So again, this is another area where we can appreciate the importance of women. We've also seen men being appointed in some countries in the portfolios that have got women and actually doing a good job. So that also proves that men can be feminists, that this is not a responsibility of women alone. This is a responsibility that is for both men and women. And we are not against men leading in the sector. We just want more women to lead also everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a couple. Sorry, I'm a former politician. I can't help but clap. And we have a first question here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association, welcome and thank you for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. I have two factual questions in response to your presentation, and then my question. Factual questions. You said that women's representation in top-level leadership has decreased from 7.2% of elected heads of state to 6.6%. Is this from 2017 to 2018? There are no dates that you gave.
Yes, everything. Everything is coming in the same. The report is based from 2017 to last year. It is including all elections and changes done last year.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that was correct. Secondly, when you were talking about that there would be no cultural change unless there are special measures, what specific special measures are you talking about? Quotas? What else?
Quotas, targets, actual incentives in political parties that promote and position women. So we're talking about both sometimes sanction and incentive, but something extra that doesn't just allow countries to sit back and expect that things will just take care of themselves.
Okay, my two questions. Why do you believe that there has been a rather significant decrease in top-level leadership by women at this particular time? Excuse me. And on the economic side, it's been said that it will take 217 years to reach gender parity. What's the estimate at the current rate that we're going to reach parity in the political sphere?
It is changing a lot. If we see the percentage of how women in parliament increased from 2016 to 2017, it was only 0.1%. But for the last year, this analysis, it went up to 1%. It's much better, but of course it's not a good number. 1% is, as you said, come on. So it's really slow. If we compare, for example, Beijing 1995, it was only 11% of women MPs, and now 25 years later, it is in 24%. But if we take into consideration that it is almost 25 years for only 13% increase, again, it's really, really slow. That's why we believe that we need to encourage Parliament to have affirmative action. In many cases, I believe that, of course, we need to start from the beginning, from politics, because that's the place that you're going to take a lot of decisions related to laws. There are many legislation around the globe that is discriminating women. There's also the possibility in parliaments to decide on budget, to be asking the government to make certain policies. So that's one side. I believe that the other important side has to do with an economic agenda. If a woman is not absolutely sure that her family, her kids are going to be okay, she's not going to take risks. So we need to make a good infrastructure like daycare facilities, good schools, health centers, give them proper information, also financial architecture that is more inclusive in terms of subsidies, loans, access to finance. So there are a lot of different policies that we need to develop to really facilitate the access of women to politics, and that goes into many different spheres. I believe that sometimes we are taking this only as an inclusion, but I believe that we need to go a step further, which is prioritizing women in our agendas in Parliament and, of course, in all politics.
We also have pushback right now, which I think contributes towards the slowing down of women wanting to contest for office, because it is brutal. There is political violence that women experience in many other countries. There's verbal abuse. There's abuse on social media, and that traumatizes women and their families. At the same time, in some of the countries where this verbal abuse is very strong, we have seen a significant large number of women coming out nevertheless and facing it head on. So, there isn't a straightforward answer for these things, but the environment right now is not the most enabling environment for women to rise. This morning, SG called on us to push back against the pushback, because there is a pushback. So we just have to be stronger in pushing back against the pushback ourselves. At International Women's Day, commenting about how long it's going to be taking us to see equal representation of women and gender equality in the world, Secretary General said he's not prepared to wait for his grandchildren to actually ascend to parity. So it's a difficult terrain.
Thank you. Sherman?
Yeah. Sherman Bryceby's South African Broadcasting. I have a couple of questions. In many ways, this is a very beautiful map that kind of belies how it impugns the bad actors who find themselves at the bottom of the list. So I wonder explicitly if you could tell us what the message is to those people, those countries that find themselves at the bottom of the list with 0 female cabinet representation, 0 members of females in parliament. What's your message to them? In addition to that, Madam Executive Director, there are a number of elections in the region you come from, in SADC, South Africa, your own country, Malawi, Mozambique, Namibia, and others. What would your message be to the electorate, framed in terms of the discussion we're having here today? And I thought Ethiopia was on the top 10 of countries that have gender parity in their cabinets. I don't see it on your list.
10.
You have 9, but there's a 10th country, Ethiopia. Yeah. That happened in October last year.
Yes.
It is in the top 10 list.
The country that we did not exclude in the 10 is Mexico, and you better explain why.
Yes.
So Ethiopia's in the 10, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. What Madam Executive Director is saying about Mexico is absolutely true, because we had we have a legal cabinet that is defined by the Constitution, and in that sense, the cabinet in Mexico has parity. It is 50%. But when it goes to the larger cabinet, it goes to 44% for women, which is also high, but we were struggling with this legal and technical questions, but Mexico is having a huge improvement in terms of the number of women in the cabinet. So going to the legal definition, it is in a parity in the cabinet in Mexico. So that's the 10th country. And, the message that we are sending is it is always absolutely clear to our parliaments. First of all, we have a very clear rules in IPU, and when a delegation, for example, is not having a gender-balanced delegation at our assemblies or voting systems, they, instead of getting 3 votes, they only get 2. So we are always punishing those delegations that are not including women. There are some cases that we need also to encourage them to have men, but in most cases it's about, of course, with women. The other issue is that we are working very strong in IPU. We have the Women's Forum. Susan Kihiga, she's the chair of this Women's Forum, and she's very active. What we're trying to do with this forum and the different activities is to give our colleagues the proper tools on how to design better legislation to improve women access, inclusion, but of course to participate in politics. We are aware that we need to work very closely, particularly with these countries that are not having women or that are having women but in a very small number. There are many parliaments that are having, for example, 1 or 2 women only. So we need to work close with them in terms of, yes, visibility, but also awareness, information. We need to change culture, and that's not easy. Again, I believe that we need to make institutional changes to make faster cultural changes. Otherwise, culture takes too long, and we cannot afford to wait any longer. It's for us, it's for our daughters, our granddaughters. They should have a better and more inclusive world, and that has to start from politics.
Maybe just to also to add that we need to make a strong case about democracy being for the people, by the people, not for the people, by the men. And therefore create very concrete thresholds that political parties must cross in order for them to have legitimacy in parliament. If in their own party they are unable to represent most of the people who live in the constituencies that they are trying to lead, that must actually question. We have to question if they really are a true representative of the people. So we definitely have to find different mechanisms to make the point. We also need the media to write a lot about this country. So I'm throwing it back to you as homework, just like we have homework, to actually help us to continuously engage and challenge, because countries care about their image. They care about what you write. If they are not written about in the most flattering light, that could be a way to nudge them to do the right thing. So we would really appreciate. It's only 10. So you could dedicate a bit of time to these 10 countries and help us to bring about the changes. My message to SADC in my region is that most of the countries are so close. So they are, if you would say, it's one of the regions that is a low-hanging fruit. They are at peace, so there is no war, so we don't have an excuse of struggling with conflict. It's not the best economies in the world, but it's not the worst part of the world. There is already a history of political activism in those countries. You have strong opposition parties that are very active. So there's healthy contestation that happens in those countries. So my message would be that the men and the women of those countries who care about these issues must use the space that exists in those countries to demand more and to call for better and more changes, and to use their vote to actually bring about changes. And I would say to all the heads of state of Southern Africa, we need 50-50 cabinets. I am here not representing my region or my country necessarily in this position, but it would be nice if people from my region would affirm the office I work for by giving UN Women a present of 50-50 cabinet. I'm just asking.
That's a good engagement. We are, just so everyone knows, our next event is on violence against women MPs. So we do have to get there, but I do see 3 quick questions and 3 quick answers. Yes.
Hi, my name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. I have 2 questions. The first one regarding the fact you talked about that a legal quota would change our reality and make cultural change. But sometimes, specifically when it comes to oppressive regimes, they use the legal quota as a way to paint a positive picture about these regimes. So what would you say in this regard? And the second question is on women's solidarity and coordination, specifically on grassroots level. Which role do you see that the UN could play in this regard? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe, can I do something sort of probably heretical? Can I get the rest of the questions and then we have you answer? Just because I'm worried about the time. Madam, and then sir.
Thank you. I'm Ellen Wolfhorst for the Thomson Reuters Foundation. 2 questions, but they're really quick. One, I'm just trying to understand the time frame. If we're talking about is it a 1-year span we're talking about from the end of 2017 to the start of 2019? So I'm a little confused about the dates. The second question is you talk about the value of quotas and affirmative action. Could you just cite a few examples of countries where that has been the most effective? Thank you.
Sure. And sir? Sir?
Thank you for this presentation. My name is Abadi. I'm from the paper Le Dossier. I have 2 questions, if I may. One, we are here talking about gender parity. Look around this room. There are twice as many women as men. The first question is, what do you do to interest men in this subject? Second, Secretary General Guterres yesterday said about parity, it is a matter of power, it's an issue of power. You talked about quotas. How do you think power can be acquired for women in the Security Council? And what has been done in this respect? Thank you.
Thank you. And I will let you know that there is another document that you can get off our website, and we'll be happy to give it to you as well, that has a further in-depth analysis about the list of countries with quotas. There are 130 countries that have quotas now, and some further examples that you may find helpful. And again, our teams here will be very happy to direct you to that information, and we'll post a link as well. I would now turn to Phumzile?
Yeah, okay. I will leave you to see on the countries for quotas on the website, just so that we save time. But on the issue of the UN working at a grassroots level, we definitely feel it is important for us to work at grassroots level. And we work in India, for instance. We've been supporting, and we've seen the increase of the women panchayats, which is the local councillors there, and they have done amazing work in those local municipalities where we have women, especially in the provision of the basic needs for women. We've also seen in Egypt the increase of women made a difference. In Tunisia, the increase of women made a difference. In Afghanistan, the increase of women has made a difference. We have also seen that women will pay attention to things like birth certificates, IDs for women, which are all essentials for women to access services. We aren't always able to be everywhere where you need local government, because it's a much more demanding area of work just because of the size of the terrain. So we partner with civil society a lot in those countries. We would like to do more, because we feel it is very rewarding. But just one sentence I would say about whether use of quota encourages regimes that are oppressive to use this in a negative way. Sometimes we have to do the right thing no matter what. Push against the pushback. Let's make sure that we can actually out-argue them and organize in order to make sure that these special measures are actually used for the right thing. They will always have something to say. They will always try to sabotage what we're trying to achieve. So that's just the lay of the land. We just have to continue the fight. The question about interesting men, we are supporting men's organizations all over. We need you also to help, because men have to also lead from the front on these issues. UN Women has a He for She campaign, which is mobilizing women. We have gender champions who are predominantly men. We work with Men Engaged and different men's organizations. We work with Boy Scouts, also all around the world. So we are actively trying to work with men, but it works best if men are actually in the forefront of this, because we are the usual suspects. So it's helpful if you change the suspect. And on the change of the Security Council, I will leave that to you, ladies and gentlemen of the press.
Thank you, President.
Thank you very much. In terms of the questions about quotas, well, if we see the list of the top 10 countries for having more women in parliament, the first one in the list is Rwanda, then Cuba, Mexico, Grenada, Sweden, Costa Rica, Italy, Timor-Leste, Monaco, Zimbabwe. From this list, the top 10, 8 of them are having some kind of legal quota or some kind of quota in their political parties. So yes, quotas are really working, and that's good, because again we're trying to change the culture and we are trying to push it harder. If it is related or used to give more legitimacy to an authoritarian regime, I don't think so. And I don't think so because, first, we are not seeing, in authoritarian regimes, we are not seeing a strong presence of women in parliament, so they are not using it. Second, in many countries that we can believe that there's an authoritarian regime, I believe that if they start having some women in their parliaments, something can start changing at community level, at grassroots level, because you start seeing a different picture. But when you're seeing in the newspaper every day the same male faces, nothing is going to change. There are some countries, very conservative countries, that when they started having women in parliaments, these women were attacked in social media, for example, from their own constituencies, because they are making a change, and changes are not easy. So I don't think that these gender quotas can be used in that sense. What we see in some cases is that, yes, some authoritarian regimes are having some kind of parliament to say that they are democratic. But that is not a gender issue. That's a political problem. About the dates for this study is it's presenting an analysis on how elections last year, in 2018, changed the composition of the parliaments. Yes, we have different statistics comparing from 1995, comparing to some other years, but in general, what this study is about is elections in 2018. And to make men interested in this issue, well, they all have a mother, and they should be interested because it's about fairness, it's about justice. It's about equality. If we see, for example, numbers for finance or economy, it is absolutely clear that countries that are including women in their economies are growing more. So, yes, it is convenient even for men.
Thank you very much, and certainly we'll be doing a lot of work this week in our various parliamentary engagement events here to demonstrate that women in political office make a difference in terms of the success of the country and some of the barriers that we need to eliminate, like the violence that both presenters have mentioned. But certainly for little girls in South Africa and Mexico, they are very lucky to have had such great leaders and great role models and to change the culture. So congratulations to both of you. And thank you all for being here. And again, our teams are here if you need further details. And that analysis piece is available, which the president... Bye. See you. This one. Where is that? It's on the website. Okay.
Can I have extra copies to take to the town hall, to the SGS town hall?
Do you want here, take some?